So now let's move into the Silver Age and see where this is where architecture ramps up. Different kind of people, different kind of mindset, same spiritual world principles at play. This is from continuing on in Swedenborg's book, Marriage, Love, number 76.
And so cool that he got to go, he was so curious, and he got to go to these different places and describe what they're like. The gold and the silver, very different.
So, because in that book, he's trying to learn what's the nature of true married love. What is the ideal of this possible bond, and what happened to marriage over time? How to get so messed up
in these different eras.
Yeah,
because later when it turns into polygamy or what, in later ages. So he's trying to look at what happened here over time.
And as he's going on this quest to try to find out about that, which that's just like, it's a relationship is something about what's in your mind and that's in their mind and your hearts and your commitment and things that are intangible. But what he ends up finding, at least in the parts we're focusing on, is he's talking about the architecture of the houses they live in, because that's a reflection of what's going. That's how do you plumb the depths and figure out what is this marriage love that we had and we lost? Well, you got to go look at the houses. That just proves our point in this show. Our thesis of our own show that we wrote is vindicated by the passages we selected too. So there we go. Marriage, Love, 76.
It's a good system.
Yeah. I mean, we all get rich. They were all palaces. Okay, this is a contrast with the Golden Age. They were all palaces built out of marble.
Marble, okay.
Stone having to do with the intellect.
I'm picturing like ancient Greek or Egyptian, whatever.
Yes.
Right.
In front, they had steps of alabaster with columns of jasper on each side of the steps. We also saw temples made of precious stone, the color of sapphire and lapis lazuli.
Good.
Whatever that is. The angel said to me, they have houses made of different kinds of stone because stones symbolize natural truths and precious stones symbolize spiritual truths.
Totally different building material, completely different than a tent. And the whole feeling is so different. The tent is just simple, easy to pick up and go, nothing to write home about.
You hear
it might be beautiful or have a great vibe in there or something, but you're not sort of overwhelmed. Like, oh, your tent is taking my breath away. But then you get to this second group and it's like, wow, these columns, look at this stone, look at this magnificence. It's very different vibe.
If right now, even, you took the human race and you said, where do you want to live? You can live in a tent or you can live in this palace. There'd be plenty of takers on both sides.
That's true.
There's plenty of people
There's
who would like,
who want
I want to live that close to nature.
Back to nature,
I want to live
right.
simply, given that you're not going to be roughing it and like it's going to be good.
Yeah.
I think you'd find plenty of people who are like, I want to do the tent. And plenty of people are like, I want to do that palace. Even just in the world
and
today.
Each one would feel quite alienated by that. Like, I'm not living in that thing with the columns and the...
yeah.
And the other group would be like, I am sure it's not, I'm not living in a tent. I'll tell you that right now.
We saw married couples here and there in pairs. And since they were husbands and wives, we waited to see if we would be invited in somewhere. Even as we had this in mind, so they're being polite, even as we had this in mind, moreover, as we were passing by, two of them called us back into their house. So we went up the steps and went in. They then replied, we come from peoples in Asia, and the focus of our age was the pursuit of truths by which we acquired intelligence. This pursuit was the focus of our soul and mind.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's worth pointing out, but Asia is one of those interesting terms that Swedenborg can sometimes mean by that, something more like what we might call the Middle East.
Yep.
Not necessarily far east from a very Western point of view, but
sure.
So I don't know exactly where he means. There's one point at which he even says that there was an ancient word that was used to be in Asia, and it's no longer there, seek for it in Great Tartary, which is China. So it's like, I thought China was Asia. You know, like,
Yes,
what are you
okay.
talking about? But it shifts.
All we know for sure is that these are non-Europeans.
Non-Europeans.
And from the Americas or something.
Right,
You know, they could be Middle East, could be Asia as we now call it.
Right.
But
The big.
I never knew. I skipped
area.
over that detail. I didn't realize that the Silver Age people, because I've read this story before. Okay, all right, and sure, that's one thing. You come from Asia. The thing that means something is the focus of our age was the pursuit of truths by which we acquired intelligence. So that is showing up in everything's made of stone.
That's why it's all
Because stone is truth.
Structural, monumental.
Yep.
Kind of, yeah.
The husband showed us into an anteroom outside the bedroom, which had a number of works of art on the walls and little images apparently cast out of silver. I then asked what they were. They said they are pictures and forms representing the many qualities, attributes, and delights which have to do with conjugal love. These ones here represent the unity of souls. These other ones, the conjunction of minds. The ones there, the harmony of hearts. Those over there, the delights arising as a result.
Huh. So interesting, huh? Have little sculptures that represent these different features, and it sounds like they've got them organized. So, of course, we have the soul bond ones over here, as anybody would.
It would be a faux pas.
But we put the delight ones over here. And
yeah, so you've got to display, like these are two people who are living together trying to have this conjugal love, or maybe they got it pretty strong, and they have this little display in them of this is just kind of reminding you or inspiring you of this is what you're trying to do, this is where you're going, and they're made of silver, which this is the Silver Age, which means it's a more truth-focused way to approach that, whereas in the ones we just talked about, they're saying, oh, when we talk about our married love, it's gold and light on this tent, because they have a different approach to it.
Yeah, and even their bedroom is complicated. Like, it sounds more like a primary suite kind of thing, because they've got this ante-room out there where they have art and things that sort of remind, they're marriage related conceptually out in this room before you actually go into the bedroom itself.
While we were looking, we saw on the wall a kind of rainbow consisting of 3 colors: purple, blue, and bright white.
Oh, just like most rainbows that we're familiar with.
A kind of rainbow. We saw how the purple color passed through the blue and tinted the white with a purplish blue hue, and the latter color flowed back through the blue into the purple and raised it into a kind of flaming radiance.
That's just like our set right here. Right? Doesn't this pass through the blue?
Look at that. And I don't know if it's a static, like it's a picture that indicates motion, or if it's actually moving on the wall.
It's hard to tell, isn't it? Because it sounds very, motion based.
Yeah. So then the husband said to me, "Do you understand it?" You get show him this. It's like show him this piece of art. You get it? And
you get it?
And
because there's the purple going through the blue, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
And Swedenborg's like, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Actually, what he said, I said, instruct me.
Yes, that's a polite way to listen to me.
So, isn't that cool? Don't you get it?
Yeah.
Instruct me.
Yes, right.
Like, can you actually
I'd like to hear you put it in words.
Yeah, like I get it. And,
Sure.
and you want to just say it just for my
you just
readers?
Want to be the one to say it? Yeah.
So he said, and this again, I feel like it's worth noting that the art has significance. You want to call it religious significance?
Yeah.
The art here is doing something. It's a useful art. It's focused on heavenly things. I think you can sometimes people, especially if you get the means to get whatever art you want, but even you just kind of like, okay, well, we got to have some art on the wall. You want it to be arty there. There's much more of a focus here because it's the mind displayed rather than just what are we going to put on this wall?
Yeah.
What can we afford, or what strikes my fancy right now? So he said, the purple by its correspondence symbolizes the conjugal love of the wife. The bright white, the intelligence of the husband. The blue, the beginning of conjugal love in the husband's perception from the wife. And the purplish blue, which tinted the white, conjugal love then in the husband.
Whoa.
And I just knew that the first time they said, like, okay,
That's
it's a
what I was
little
thinking.
on the nose.
I just thought that's probably what that was.
Okay, I'm going to finish this, but then maybe we go back and pick it apart a bit so that I can understand exactly what it's talking about.
Yeah.
This latter colors flowing back through the blue into the purple and raising them into a kind of flaming radiance symbolizes the conjugal love of the husband flowing back to the wife. Things like these are represented on these walls whenever we reflect on conjugal love, its mutual, progressive, and simultaneous union, and then look closely at the rainbows exhibited there. It does move.
It does move.
It's not always like this. When we're thinking in a certain way, then we see this thing there.
And then you see it coming back from the white into the purple. And it makes me sort of, I don't know, I have sympathy for Swedenborg. Because on the one hand,
Poor guy.
he gets to go up to these amazing places that, how many people have ever seen those things while they were alive in this world?
Not just the afterlife.
Not a long list
The
of them,
heaven of the Silver Age.
Going back thousands of years to these people and seeing their homes and talking with them and seeing these gorgeous things and then thinking, and I have to write this now.
And knowing.
And who on earth is going to... What is he talking about? You know, that this comes from the wife does this and then the husband's thing does that and then it goes back this way.
And back into a Europe and world at the time that largely panned what he wrote and mocked him for it. And some people were into it, but in general, Kant and those guys gave him a hard time.
It seems like from my just limited study of the 18th century that generally the lower classes would marry for love because you didn't have much money. And so they would have more sort of stable family lives and they would have children, which you sort of, a lot of kids too, because just staying alive,
economics,
all hands on deck kind of thing,
yep.
Or to take care of you when you're old and stuff like that. But the upper classes were pretty awful in terms, you know, well, that's the wife because that was arranged by the King of Spain or something.
Yes,
and
right.
But I've got the mistress over here, and then the other one over here, and then and I get the idea from some things I've read that some of the lower classes would look at them with envy, like, oh, you get to sort of be wild like that. But so some of Swedenborg's readers are like, really, just a couple together for thousands of years, you know, it would freak them out. Just even the idea of that's not the life that they were experiencing.
That's funny because Swedenborg will hammer Europe, saying that the people in Europe are perverted compared to the rest of the world.
Yes,
your sex lives are degraded and out of control.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting that it could well be, especially he's talking about the circles that he ran in.
Yeah.
Like the upper crust, the nobility of Europe. There's all kinds of bad things flourishing there.
And you do read about some of these kings and queens. It's it's pretty amazing, you know.
So he's trying to say, look, you're missing the boat. You're missing the point. You want to have a really nice wall art. It comes from this the loyalty, the commitment,
devotion,
the interplay. So
right, and this really profound love where you just can't get enough of this person. Like you're more in love now than you ever were.
So this is how that love works. Nobody asked for this. Nobody asked us to just labor over
the
details of that, but I right now want to talk about this. So either they'll edit it out or you can skip forward a few minutes, you know, like we'll get back to, but let me just talk about this, please. The purple by its correspondence symbolizes the conjugal love of the wife. So conjugal love is this love for two people to essentially become one life together. You stay two people,
right,
but you want to get closer and closer in heart and mind
And it's particularly because of, in some way, embodying love and wisdom.
Yes.
So that duality, bringing that down into a personal relationship.
Okay, so purple is the conjugal love in the wife. The bright white, the intelligence of the husband. Okay, that's easy to understand.
Okay.
The blue...
And intelligence generally also means like the degree of understanding, or like
Yes.
his worldview, like his thought structure.
The blue, the beginning of conjugal love in the husband's perception from the wife. Swedenborg elsewhere says that this conjugal love actually doesn't come into men. It comes from God into women.
It's a little bit foreign to the male of the species.
And then, so here it's saying, because the husband's starting to get something of it from his wife. And
Right.
so he's got this blue. So he's at first it's just his intelligence and her love. And then when he starts to, I'm starting to get something of this.
Something more purplish, but not all the way to purple.
So that then,
Missing some of the red in there, but
and the purplish blue, which tinted the white, which was the husband's intelligence, conjugal love then in the husband. Okay, so we got this fire
now he's
started.
on board,
We got this
right.
fire started. This latter's color flowing back through the blue into the purple and raising it into a kind of flaming radiance symbolizes the conjugal love of the husband flowing back to the wife. So even though the wife has got it in the first place, and she's given it to the husband, but then as he gets it and mixes it with his mind, and then it goes
gets
back,
cranked up
then
in some
the
way.
whole thing goes higher than it could. Oh, I never even thought about this. Things, okay, then he goes on. So that's what it's showing on the wall. It's like, this is showing, here's the steps in which we go further into love. That's on the wall there. Okay, so that's the Silver Age.
good.
Let's leave it there. You want to go to the Copper Age?
Yes, I do.
Of course. Everyone watching is like, I never agreed to go on this journey, but